I am here with Andreia Esteves, curator of the Art of Drinking Museum here in Porto, where 9,000 years of drinking history is amassed in what is possibly, the greatest collection of drinking paraphernalia in the world. Andreia, thank you very much for inviting us in. Can you tell me a little bit about how the Art of Drinking Museum came to be and how you became involved?
Yeah, of course. So the Art of Drinking Museum emerged from the passion of Mr. Adrian Bridge, who put together this incredible collection, which is called the Bridge Collection. And the Art of Drinking Museum is a museum that looks after to tell stories about rituals of drinking through different civilizations of the world. So it spans from the 9,000 years of drinking, which is the data for old objects, until modern days. So we have like 3,500 objects into the museum, and they have its own history. So they tells us how the civilizations and how human being evolved from different cultures and different rituals of drinking. Which it's funny because you mentioned something that I quite said a lot, that it's the whole collection of this subject and the most complete in the world that I know, at least.
And you would probably know if there was another one.
Right. I think so. I think so. So, and before I start to tell about my story, perhaps I should tell about the story of the collection, which is quite fun and has to also do with the story of the collector. So Mr. Adrian started to collect in 2005. He thought put together a dozen or so Roman vessels to be used into port to drink port after the dinner parties, and we could thought that okay, that's a good idea, but it wasn't because people quickly were afraid to touch the objects because he keeps saying, oh, this is 2,000 years old, and people was just like, okay, I don't want to damage anything. That's a quite fun. Then the world of wine came to being, and when I arrived and this collection, and I will tell you my backwards afterwards, but this collection was quite like very small. So the world of wine came into subject for Adrian's vision, and idea was also to display this collection into the world of wine. It makes a lot of sense, and that's where my background came into connection with the world of wine. So my background is in archaeology. I study archaeology, and in 2017 I was recruited by Mr. Adrian. I was just finishing my master degree on a very curious object, Roman object, which is oil lamps. I have made like catalog and giant research in all northern Portugal of all the oil lamps in Roman world at that time. So I started to work with this collection, as I was saying, 200 objects, 300, and it was a lot of dispersed, like in his house, in its office, and in the display case on the 8 Mod Hotel. So I got this job to inventory everything, like study everything, put all the stuff like together with photographs, measurements, a lot of inventory process. And it was then when Adrian invited me to like curate this museum, which was like for me like a young lady, was like a very interesting path. I started to begin with narratives because each object that he acquires isn't just because it belongs to a civilization, it's because it has story. Either it's about its type of technique, some people they use it, or its own provenance, because we also study provenance. that it's the really passionate thing about this collection. And just to finish the question, I think I could say that this collection is kind of magic because it's a live entity, which means that never ends. Because Adrian, it's a collector, of course, and he has his personal tastes, and we keep adding stuff. Either if I tell Adrian, okay, maybe we just need this one, or Adrian asks me the opinion or not, he just keep buying stuff that sometimes he likes, and everything makes sense because it has a story. It has a story to be told. So it tells a story of a nobleman, or about toasting a victory, or about some pieces that we will see here, which is quite interesting. It's interesting to know that this collection will keep evolving as we speak.
Yeah, I think having visited a couple of times now, and most recently being toured around personally by you, one thing that struck me is that this is not just a collection of cups and glasses. There's real story and history to so much of it that informs us about the behavior of ancient civilizations and different cultures from all over the world. And it's one of the things that excites me most about drinking in general, is that in many ways, the way in which we socialize together and drink together and eat together, but it's not quite so much fun. It tells us so much about humanity and culture, and that's why I think that somewhere like this is just an incredible kind of natural history experience, and it wouldn't appear that way to most people, I don't think, because it's cups and glasswares and jugs and things like that.
Yeah.
But there's so many stories.
Yeah, I totally agree. I used to say, a lot of my colleagues here sometimes mention, and sometimes even me and even Adrian, because it's natural to explain easier what it is, like in a rush, But it's not a glass museum. It's not the vessels museum. It's the ritual of drinking museum, which is quite different. I usually say, look, we have coins with Bacchus face. What can they say to us? They say the importance of this god in that time. So drinking process was very important in that time. Also, I usually give like an example of the Viking pendant. We have like 2 centimeters, and it's in filigree gold. So, wow, Vikings did something like that. Like Vikings, which are that man. With
Supposedly very big guys.
very big and
You'd imagine a tankard, not a little pendant.
Yeah. And they did like that little pendant to use on a necklace. So this can tell us so much about culture and about the people behavior, just like you said.
So it seems like you've found yourself in a very fortunate position in that you're partly a kind of personal shopper on behalf of Miss Adrian
sometimes
Bridge.
it's really good.
I think we need one of these. Can you maybe just briefly explain what the process is like acquiring these items? Where are they coming from?
A lot of different places, but always in auction houses. So there is a very, very careful process that requires a lot of study, because we know that sometimes, and we see some news on some bigger museums, that we have to be careful with the provenance study case. So usually there's a
This to avoid fraud or theft, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So usually Adrian always sent me things, either if he asks me opinion or either if he buys it because he likes it. Of course, he has his personal taste. And it's funny because I used to say, you're never finding us like fighting over the same objects. So I'm a very much about ancient objects, and Adrian perhaps about stories, which is it's an amazing. I think it's a really good compliment, and he also likes like recent things and connected to battles because of his military path. I agree. I think, and silver and tankards. So, but usually it is what we do. He usually acquires them or asks me opinion, and I love to do that. Like going through catalogs and just say, okay, let's see gaps or stories that can be told yet inside the museum, which is a problem. As you see, we don't have so much space. We already created a mezzanine in that time when we opened in 2020, because the collection, like from 2017 until 2020, just like grew exponentially. It was when I started here in 2017, it was like 300 objects. Now we have 3,500.
Probably another 10 by the end of the day.
Yeah, probably. We never know.
They'll just turn up.
But yeah, usually he asks me opinion, and I get like to do a study into catalogs. I use really like we have like this huge library in office, so I have a curatorial team. So, and we just study everything as we can, because if it's an ancient object, you need to have in mind that it will exist something parallel with that. It will not be like some kind of unique invention. Otherwise, it looks like, because it's hard for me as an archaeologist sometimes to not to see the object. So and what about ceramics, which I'm very familiar with the touch and how to evaluate, and just to read about it and to see photos sometimes it's not so easy, but all good for now.
Well, we're going to sort of tell the story of some of your collection by going through some items, which I'm absolutely thrilled about, and very grateful for you taking some of these out of the cases and handling them for us. So perhaps let's get started on that. And as we go, I guess we'll find more stories coming out of these different items.
For sure.
And we can discuss the people that use them and how they were used. And there's some really cool stuff you've got here, so I'm really excited about it. So you got to wear gloves.
Yeah, I need to wear gloves, because and usually we switch gloves between materials.
So you don't cross-contaminate.
Yeah. But these ones are fine. With glass we are fine. With pottery as well. With silver, let's see, maybe I just switched. Because, of course, there are really old objects, and we have like grays in our fingers that can contaminate, and then they start this process of degradation, of course.
Sure.
So let's start with the ancient one we have here. I'll just keep the seal.
Sure.
Afterwards. So.
So what have we got here? So to me it looks kind of like a wine glass.
Yeah.
It's slightly stemmed, but fairly small and quite narrow. Something like a sort of somewhere between a wine glass and a champagne flute, but shorter.
Yeah. So this is from Egypt. So it has about it's from the 2nd millennium BC. So pretty much New Kingdom on Egypt. And this is a very interesting thing, because we were talking about stems the other day, and the idea of to have stems in that period was not the same that we thought these days, not mean to get warmer or drink or something.
Yeah, to preserve the coolness of the drink. Yeah.
In this period in particular, to have stem was something connected to higher level. So the hourglass will be closer to the divine. And this object in particular has a really good symbolism, because it's supposed to appear like a lotus flower.
Okay.
And lotus flower has this symbol of rebirth. There's the flower opens its petals every morning and closes every evening. So it reminds us of birth and death. So, and this was used like in ritualistic ceremonies for sure in Egypt. And also this color of blue faience, it's not really faience, but in that period it can look like faience for us.
What is faience?
Faience is a type of ceramics with a patine in glass, vitrificated glass.
Yes.
With color. But in here it's a little bit different process. And the funniest thing is about Egypt would love to have things in this color, because it looks like more elaborated, and it has more symbolism for them to the power of rebirth and all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's this glorious turquoise. I mean, it's just phenomenal that this is 4,000 years old because the color is so bright. But you're right. I mean, it's a familiar color to anyone who's looked at kind of ancient Egyptian
Yeah.
pictures and things like that. It often appears in headdresses and things like that, right?
Yeah, and beams for the head and like jewelry and it's because the other thing that I forget is just like to be closer to precious stones.
Okay.
So which connect us once again with the divine. There's a similarity. I didn't pick so much things about it's ancient civilizations, but not so ancient, because they were really connected with symbolism and sometimes rituals a little bit crazy. So it's a totally different thing that we do these days, of course.
And do we know what they would have been drinking out of it?
Probably wine. Yeah, Egyptians they drink a lot of beer and a lot of wine. We can see from that reliefs.
Some things don't change, you know.
True. But yeah, they are.
Right.
We didn't study the inside, but yeah.
I mean, I just find it remarkable that this passes as a modern day wine glass.
Yeah.
And also, that, as you say, it's modeled on a lotus flower, which sort of leads me to think, well, are all wine glasses in that case modeled on flowers? It's just we're not
looks
really
like it.
aware of it,
Yeah.
you know? Because this shape it's obviously carried down through the centuries, millennia, in fact.
Right.
And
you can find it. That's a very interesting thing here in the museum. You can find a lot of examples, but you can find a Roman glass very close to this shape. You can find a contemporary glass with this shape. So there are things that were like created a long time ago, really long time ago, that we still use today.
yeah, and again, like what you were saying about stemmed glasses, this is quite clearly a stemmed piece of serviceware, and yet the stem was there for a
Represents-
different purpose. It almost feels like when we talk about stems as being a way of, not having our hands warming the drink, perhaps we've almost reverse engineered that idea. And, it feels like a neat way of designing a glass these days. But in fact, the origins of the stem go back much further, and it's more symbolic, representative of a flower, like you say.
True. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Amazing. Thank you.
Cute. Let's go for another.
Yep. Now this looks quite different.
Yeah, quite different. Do you think it's a dish? Yeah. This is Hellenistic Phiale from the 4th century BC. And Phiales has this an amazing story. They were used to drink wine always, and you have this space here to put your middle finger on and to drink like that.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah.
Wow. So what we're looking at, so it's sort of like a giant saucer,
Yeah.
but this saucer has what I would describe as like a punt in the bottom of it, like you might get in a bottle of wine.
Yeah, and that is the full symbolism of this object, because the centerpiece is like a belly button. It was like conceived to be like a belly button. It's called omphalos, and it was supposed to represent the centrality of the world. So the belly button of the mother who gives like babies. So the idea is to use this type of objects into like fertility rituals. So for the women to drink from, to have fertility, and it's a very interesting thing. And two other very interesting things about this object is just like you can still find the ink, the color of earthenware, like color red, remains here. So it usually it has like a patina. Sometimes you just not here, you cannot have it yet, but inside you can still see some remains of the color. And another,
So what was that, like a kind of like a glazing on it?
yeah,
or
like
paint?
the glazing, yeah. Because if you put like wine or water or any drink in contact with ceramics, as it has like
It's porous.
yeah. So it will like not.
Seep into it, yeah.
And the back which is also amazing as well. I think it's the only object we have here with such a thing. Has the prints of the person who made it. Because it's amazing to see. I'm trying to see. You can see it from, because it was made by thumb. So
Just been pressed in there. So these are 2,500-year-old fingerprints on the bottom of it.
someone that used it, yeah.
And it's called a Phiale.
Phiale.
And that's Phiale.
Hiale.
Okay. And you're going to have to give me a little bit of sort of cultural history lesson here. So it's Hellenistic.
Hellenistic, so Greek.
Greek, yeah. Okay.
It's the transition period between Greece and Roman.
Sure.
There is something also very interesting about this typology, which is you can find it on Greek world, on Roman world, on Islamic world. So it's a shape that just like rhytons, which are their horns that you can drink from. There are lots of civilizations that replicate its shape because of the symbolism. And in here, of course, the fertility, it was the biggest reason. They did a lot of rituals.
And it would have been wine. So it was, the idea was that you, as a prospective mother, you drink the wine from this this vessel, and then because of the symbolism of the belly button, and obviously that's the umbilical cord, the sort of life-giving thing, then you're more likely to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it?
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
And another really interesting thing, and I didn't pick anything from Greek world because they are really fragile and or big, so to have here, but usually this type of forms were lots of times painted in other drinking vessels. Like the Greeks had this amazing ability of paint story into vessels, like the Romans did on the walls. The Greeks did it on vessels, which is amazing for us. As historians and archaeologists, because we can know about his clothes and his vessels, his rituals. So there are a thing we usually say that vessels through vessels, because you can see lots of fiales in other vessels that we have here, used in marriage ceremonies, like a set we have here that represent a full marriage on Greek. There are women to have these fiales for the bride, which means that you will conceive. It's a few days, yeah.
I mean, it speaks a lot about how they valued drinkware, I guess, when they're putting these beautiful works of art onto the side of it. You wouldn't bother doing that if these were kind of throwaway items that, weren't intended for being, used in ceremony. And you've got the symposium, right?
Yeah.
Should we talk a little, because we've not got any items from the symposium, I don't think, that we're going to look at specifically.
No, we can talk about it.
But yeah, it might just be worth mentioning it since we're on Greece, because I was sort of taken aback by the number of different components there were to serving wine and drinking wine, and the symbolism of that. So maybe if you could give us a brief outline of how that worked.
So symposium was the drinking party in Greek, in any Greek world. So while in Greece, symposium was only held by men, so only men were allowed to come in, and the host will be the symposiarch, so it will receive and to have like in his house a space for that, only for that, with benches, with musicians, with poetry readers, and so it's like this only this space to drink, not food was allowed, and we have like a full tableware for that. So usually we use like a hydria, which means that it's to carry water, and it is in bronze or in ceramics, and it has 3 handles to be carried by more people, because it could be like lots of liters of water. And do you think why water on a Greek symposium? And because the Greeks mix up water with wine. So 1 portion of wine for 3 portions of water, because they believe that they are not supposed to consume alcohol in its pure state. Otherwise, they will sin as only gods could
Handle it.
Yeah. So
It's very restrained of them, like very sensible, rather than just going full in for the wine like most of us do these days.
Romans came and
Changed all of that. Yeah.
so, but yeah, Greeks are very.
I guess you can last longer in this symposium situation with the conversation, the poetry, the politics, the philosophy, if you're diluting your wine down a little bit, right?
You see, yeah, and it could, but there is a quote which I don't know, unfortunately, by my hand, but by Plato, I think, which tells how many craters, which is the other big object where they mix water with wine. How many craters will be allowed in the symposium? So they were very ponderate about how much they can handle it, and they should drink or not.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any sort of culture of people who, I guess, was so meticulous in designing drinking sessions as the symposium and the Greeks, because to have all of these different items that have to be present, to have a room specifically for this, and obviously this is wealthy people only, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's remarkable that over the time they developed all of these different ritualistic elements to get themselves in the right headspace and situation, I guess, to encourage dialogue and philosophical talk and all of that kind of thing.
Another interesting thing now that you are talking about it is that drinking games also started on not started. I cannot say it started because there are forms of drinking games like in gatherings they play with drinking, of course, for centuries. But Greeks have this I found out crazy game which is called kotabus. I don't know if you heard about it.
I think so, I know.
Yeah, so we have a kylix, which is one of the types of vessel that you can drink from, and you need to spill your drink until a target on the room. So it was like the first form of
So you're flicking drink at
yeah, you drink it and then you have to remain like a little bit
drops.
for drops. So
and then you flick it at like a game of darts with the leftover bits of your drink. Okay, sounds messy. But,
a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
But then Roman appeared, and they as I only have a Byzantine vessel here to show you, so we can go through also Roman if you like. So then Roman adapt this symposium as they have done with a lot of the Greek culture. So the Romans almost pretty much drunk from all the wisdom of the Greek world. So they pick up the symposium and they created the Triclinium, which is the name of the room they should have inside the wealthiest peoples in the house. And why Triclinium? Because it has supposed to have like 3 klinesh, which are the type of bench. Because while the Greeks only drink, Romans also eat in those rituals. So they used to be like reclined. And not lay down and not sit. They are reclined like in a chill position.
And always 3 benches.
Always 3 benches.
So it sort of limits the number of people that can turn up to these events because you've only got 3.
Sometimes it gets a little crazy as well.
Right, and they're just sort of slung all over the place.
Yes, They
and when you say a little bit crazy, are we talking about like no clothes, kind of crazy? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the Romans, that's the other thing, that Romans started to introduce women into these conversations.
Yes, well, you're going to want to if it's getting that crazy. Yeah, you've got some replicas of these in the museum here, haven't you?
Yes.
They are, I assume they're replicas.
They are replicas, they're replicas.
But
the Triclinium benches, of course.
Yeah. And they're sort of like very low sofas or a chaise lounge with kind of, but with both ends, and it's sort of reclined, isn't it? So I can just imagine myself kind of
as well.
flopped over the end of it after one of these mammoth drinking sessions.
And a very, very lower, like with 3 legs table as well, usually very ornamented, like with golds and with glyphs and with all of that stuff. They want that type of rooms also is to show power, and the walls were like with mosaics and the floor as well, so all connected with Bacchus and the god of wine, so all in that spirit. And they just they talk as well. They played music as well, like the Greeks. but just not so philosophic, I guess, and with no boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking of Bacchus, was Bacchus also, was there a Greek version of Bacchus as well, or was that a
Yeah.
Roman? Yeah.
Yeah, so Bacchus was also Dionysus in the Dionysus,
Yeah.
in Greek world. So it over times it was changing, and between art histories there are some theories that sometimes you can find Bacchus young and sometimes you can find Bacchus old. So it always I guess it has to do with the culture, either it's if Greek or if it's Roman. The god is the same, so he usually has like 3 or 4 elements that are always present with him, which is the thyrsus, which is a stick with a pine cone on the top.
Yep.
That symbolize like earthy things, like the vineyard and all of that stuff.
Nature.
The vineyard,
Yeah.
of course. This is Sekit, which is Menades, which are the women that followed him, and the satyrs, which are the men with the coats and all of that.
Okay.
And also the jaguar, which means like strength and all of this stuff. Bacchus was also in Roman time god of spectacular and theatrical. So we can also connect this with like plays and all of that stuff.
So all the good stuff, really.
Yeah.
Theatre and drinking,
Yeah.
and nature. Yeah, I mean I'm trying to build a career around that at the moment. So that's great. Okay, what is next? Where do we go from here?
This one it's funny because we don't have so much to tell. Only the quote. It has like inscription. It's very, very interesting.
So we're looking at
the bronze.
it's bronze. So it's green,
Yeah.
that green patina. It's quite small. It looks something like a sort of miniature garden, like urn that you'd have plants growing out of, or like maybe a very nice bird bath, or possibly even like a font. Yeah.
It's a very strange because it's very like open the ball, right?
Yes.
But then it has a little stem.
Yeah.
And the shape, it's not so usual because this is from, sorry, I didn't tell you, but this is from the Byzantium period, so after Romans. So this is like 17th century AD. So and
Sorry, which century? AD?
seventh
century.
Yeah. So and interesting fact about this, and you are talking about the patine, so this green of bronze. This reminds me another conversations that we have and studies that we see here a lot, that usually in Greek world and in Roman world and even in the Byzantine world, the objects were not supposed to have this color like green. This was like a time passing,
The oxidation of it, yeah.
They were painted like the statues we see in the museum, so all green or all white in marble. They were all painted. It looked very strange. Once I saw a Caesar statue, I think they have done like a chromatic study, and they are all yellows and reds, and it just like
Red.
it looks really strange. So
That sounds like modern art, doesn't it?
yeah, it's very strange. But with the time, of course, it starts to become only green. So it's just another thing.
It's a strange thing, isn't it? Because it's so beautiful with that green patina.
And with objects, it's the same. We have a Greek calyx, here in the museum that we have studied and cleaned in a conservation process, and we find out this beautiful blue and beautiful gild inside. So I used to say that each of our objects are like an archaeological dig, because you can still find more and more layers as you go through them.
Yeah. Amazing. So what was this used for?
So it has a loop handle which was not complete, so it's broken over time, and perhaps it was for suspension. It was, or because it's not just practical to handle it from here. So
can you spin it around just so we can get it?
Sorry.
That's great.
So perhaps it was just for handle in some sort of place.
Or for hanging it or for holding it?
For hanging.
Yes, yeah.
on a wall or on a scarf or something. And interesting and the marvelous thing about this object is that it's very actual. It says in Greek. It has this inscription here on the inside lip.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Maybe we can just angle that towards this camera here. That's great. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's perfect.
So, and it says, we cannot read it, but there's a translation that we have done from the Greek, which says, when we take a drink, our cares go to sleep and we let our voice go. Which is like, what else we need?
Yeah, what else do you need to know that these people understood how to drink? Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and perhaps we know because this is one of the objects we have in our catalog, really recent, launched last year, and we find out like a Greek quote about passage of time and about connection with wine, and perhaps there's some a translation of that quote that sometimes with time it was like misunderstanding and it gains like a very shorter one. But we probably are like 100% sure that it is what it says. So it's very interesting to understand that wine has this ability of let you chill, right? And also not to speak about the medical uses for wine as well as antiseptic and to analgesic.
Yes,
for a reason.
Of course, yeah. And I guess the other sort of thing that it suggests is that, you know, if wine is there to help you unwind and relax and sort of free your mind of thoughts, it suggests that these people experience stress like the rest of us, and then
very
you needed to find ways to de-stress like we do today, and like some people use alcohol. So that's fascinating as well, that, you know, 1,500 years ago, same problems, different situation.
Sometimes same solutions.
Yeah, sometimes the same solutions.
Yeah.
This solution, though, I mean, it looks like it's hard to drink out of. It's got this kind of ribbed sort of ball bit around the rim that...
Yeah, but with a stem, I think it's like, right?
Yeah. And then that wide tops as well. I mean, I guess it's something like a cocktail glass in a way, like a coupe. Yeah, cocktail glass. But used for consuming wine, presumably.
Yeah, and also like the type of bowls we also have, not Phiales, but other bowls that sometimes Romans did in glass or in precious stones. They just did the bowl. You just need to drink from it.
Yeah. We were looking around yesterday and you showed me quite a few items that are broad bowls, which on the face of it seem pretty impractical for consuming liquids out of, because with that wide diameter, when you tip, you end up tipping quite a lot of the drink towards you. And I was saying, a lot of them remind me of the quaich, the Scottish drinking item. And I think, and you can maybe correct me or elaborate, that a lot of the time this is sort of passing from one person to another. It's because it's the two hands holding, it feels like a gift and not just something that it's just for yourself.
Just for yourself, yeah. True. And now that you are talking about like shallow balls and all of that things, I just remind me that I forget to tell something important about the Phiale, which is the idea, and this is pretty much the same, I guess. The idea of to be like really rounded and with this big diameter, it's also to fill your mouth with the liquid that you are tasting of.
Yeah, you can't take small sips.
Yeah, so you
no half measures.
Yeah, so you like it's prehend for all of your mouth, so it's very interesting as well.
That is interesting, yeah, because it suggests that the act of drinking had to be all-encompassing. It's like you need to devote yourself to this and apply yourself to this thing in order to do it properly.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What's next? Let me think. One that you like.
Okay. I like all of them. So, oh yes.
The biggest one. So.
This is why I like it. It's big.
Yeah. This is from Huari culture. So we are talking about Mesoamerican.
Yes.
Civilizations. And what is funny about this object is that it is a whistling kettle. Kettle was the name given for this type of vessels in that period, and these type of vessels were usually used to drink shisha, which is a type of maize beer. I think I'm saying correctly. Shisha, I think so. And this is a very interesting thing because I don't know so much about the technique how to do it, but it is a whistling kettle. So, which means that it has this chamber inside. I don't know if you can see, and then I'll show that chamber. You see? So when the liquid is here, like, I don't know, halfway. And when you do this symbol to drink, right? When you drink it, you get a sip. Air will come in between this chamber, and it starts to ignite like a whistling sound from here, from the mouth of the otter, which is the mammal animal.
Right, for anyone who's still listening and not watching the video version of this, what we have is a large clay pottery cup that I would estimate is probably at least a pint, probably a pint and a half.
But the 18th century, more or less,
18th century. 8th century, and it's connected to a kind of ornament of an otter, which has got its head turned up at the sky and holes in its mouth. And then this connection to the cup and the otter, there's a pipe at the bottom. And so what I assume happens is you fill this cup with this maize, this corn beer, you drink, and the otter itself has got the liquid in too. So in actual fact, given that the otter holds beer as well, you're probably looking at least 2 pints in the whole thing.
Good point.
And then what happens is as the beer goes down inside the otter, it obviously has to pull air in to displace the beer. And so as the air comes in, presumably the holes in the mouth are of the right aperture to cause a whistling sound.
And it's and we have tried already. So and it's very interesting because it's like a little bird, like
I mean, that's just. I mean, I've noticed.
Technologically speaking, it's just like wow.
I know. I mean, I remember. It reminds me of the sort of whistling lollipops that you get as a child. You know, where do you ever get those? When it's like hard candy and you can whistle through it. And this sort of these sort of vessels, which are obviously made by adults, 1400 years ago. But what's clear is there's joy there in the consumption of this liquid. They're gamifying it. They're creating fun, creating music as part of the drinking experience. And it is that almost childlike exuberance in the whole process that you get with like a whistling lolly. Adults these days are not in the mind of drinking out of things that make a tune. And maybe we've lost something there, you know?
Yeah, I think that those days, we just have like this quick thought and we are in a rush for everything. So I think the special thing about some of these pieces is the art, the mastery that belong to each vessel, and each one is like unique. Either if it's a different technique, either if it's like almost magical things that people like, wow, at that time. When the Mesoamericans also have these incredible like vessels in pottery to drink chocolate, and they drink chocolate not as we drink today, like hot chocolate or something, or in consistent ways. They drink the foam, which was like chocolate fermented, and they drink it, and it is said that it's very like strange flavor. So they have these special vessels with iconic references like the god of chocolate and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen before the kind of the wooden whisks that they used to stir these things up. True. If you go to Mexico, you can buy those quite freely.
And here we have also in Wow we have the chocolate museum.
Yes.
So and it talks about all of this, the Olmecas who started to create this type of drink, and it's very interesting.
Chocolate drinking's having a bit of a comeback at the moment. I think I've got a couple of friends who, maybe they're not drinking so much alcohol anymore these days, or they've given up the sort of party lifestyle. And some of them are kind of really into getting quite expensive high cacao chocolates, and then they prepare them in this powder and they drink it. And I'm told, you almost get like a sort of drug-like high off, whatever antioxidants are in there or some other kind of chemical.
It's true, and the choco beans also has a lot of good properties if you drink it, and if you try it, it doesn't seem like chocolate. It's like a different thing, like almost like a very different flavor. Like
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Right. What are we looking at next then?
Next, we are going to pick up drinking games.
Wow. Look at this.
Yeah, we started to talk about drinking games a while ago.
Yeah.
But just to talk about this vessel first. So we have a Passe glass, which is the actual name of the object, in glass. Very tall, like glass with a lot of different like measures or lines, which the vessel came the name because of that, because each mark of this is called a passe, a measure. So that's why the Passe glass. Or also a very strange coincidence is like that it was also a passing game. So you need to pass the cup.
Right, so this is a drinking game where you pass this glass round,
yes.
but also the gradients on the side are also called passes as well. So it sort of looks like a vase. It's tall and narrow, like at least a foot long. So how did this game work exactly?
So if you have, in this case, you have like 5 threads, so 5 passe. So you should have like 5 friends to play, so 6 persons on the table. And the idea was to fill it up until the top, and the first person in only one gulp needs to achieve the first passe. And if it drank less or more than it was supposed to, you need to go the next one. So until you reach one line, you don't stop playing.
Right. So you get forfeits for not being an accurate drinker. And this is going to be difficult because these passes are different distances apart as you go down the glass. So you've got to kind of gauge each one individually to get it right. And of course, as you drink more, then you're going to be worse at doing that, I suppose.
It's quite tough, yeah. But I suppose it was like an amazing game to play with in taverns. This is from the 7th century, I didn't say, but 16th century, sorry, from Germany. So, and drinking games were a lot popular in that time.
And this would have been with beer?
Yeah, with beer, And typically in taverns, and you'll find lots of paintings from Renaissance period with a lot of people with this type of glasses. They are very, very funny to see. And drinking games has this popularity, right? In fact, it started with a long time ago, as we've talked about with Greeks and all of that stuff. But people together on the table to drink just for play. So it's something that connects us to these days, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's drinking games are frowned upon these days, I think.
You can buy it on the supermarket, like a drinking game set, like beer pong. Yeah, or something.
And I guess these kind of drinking games, especially where there's a communal cup, I think most people these days are a bit too sort of germophobic to be playing that kind of thing.
True.
But I'd play it if they were close friends. Then I wouldn't have a problem with that kind of thing. It reminds me a little bit of there's a ritual at the moment in Guinness drinking. Guinness, obviously iconic, that pint, black liquid with the white foam on top. And the game is, and I've got to assume that this game was invented by Guinness because it sort of encourages you to drink more Guinness. But what you have to do is you have to take a big swig of the pint, and on the side of the Guinness glass it always says Guinness, and the idea is that you split the G on the Guinness, and what that means is where the black and the white meet on the drink itself, where the foam and the liquid meet, that line has to pass through the center of the letter G.
How precise.
Well, I reckon you've got maybe, in fact, it's probably similar width to these sort of passes.
Yeah.
You know, you've got maybe 2 or 3 millimeters to play with. And if you hit the G, then obviously all of your friends respect you and they think you're really cool. And I think if you want to play the most extreme version of this game, if you miss the G, then you've got to down the rest of the pint. Which, of course, you know, escalates pretty quickly because you're just sat there at the bar downing pints every time you sip this drink.
True.
But no, you've got quite a lot of drinking game kind of paraphernalia here, haven't you?
Yeah, different ones. We have also puzzle jugs, which is very interesting to play as well. So it's a jug generally, and it has like these holes around the neck of the jug. So and you have to find those two holes, which releases the liquid from the interior. I think it's from the handle the liquid is come from. That's why it's so mysterious.
Yes.
And if you, for sure, if you are accurate on those 2 holes, which is very difficult if you have 10, the liquid will spill.
So there are 10 holes in total, and you've got there's 2 holes in particular that you have to cover.
Yeah.
And then that creates a sort of
secret chamber,
like a pressure thing, like a siphon almost, that prevents it, and then it goes through a passageway and comes out. But none of this is very obvious at all when you look at.
No. And strangely, not the same like type of game of this one. In this one, you should like quickly become drunk, right?
Yes.
And in that one, it
you're
pretty much you want to drink and
yeah, that's true.
And the other thing that we have very funny is the Fuddling cup, which is also English, I think. Yeah. So it's like the smallest like cups, like 4 together. They are connecting into the interior and also from the exterior.
And these are they're sort of like ceramic. Little espresso cup type size, aren't they?
Very, very small. And the funniest thing, it's a solo game, so you just play it by your own. And the idea was perhaps you be humiliated by your friends, I don't know, because you have to reclinate to get a drink, but you never know if it's from there that the drink will spill or the other 3 deposits. So they are all connected. The liquid is inside, so you never know from which cup will.
So when you pour a drink into the Fuddling cups, there's 4 of them. Mm-hmm. Do all of them fill, or do you pour it into one in particular and then? And
they are going to a
during
chamber.
the act of drinking. Oh, it goes into a chamber. Yeah, and so you've got a sort of 1 in 4 chance of getting this right. And if you try and drink out of the wrong one, you're going to get it down your shoulder or something like that. To your point, it is fascinating how different cultures have come up with drinking rituals that both give you too much alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting over medicated, and then other ones where you're being deprived of it. But both of them are just basically messing with the dose. And that's so interesting that I guess that we've identified that there is a correct dose of alcohol, you know, one that keeps you from getting too drunk, but also releases you a little bit, and basically just to laugh at each other, I suppose.
Yeah, true. Totally agree with you.
Okay, what's next?
Last but not the least.
Okay, so what have we got here? It sort of looks like an egg timer in that the base and the top are similar to one another.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's made out of thick glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea, I bring this one to talk about drinking poison. So this is a 16th century rock crystal cup. So it means that you look at this and you find out like, what is that rock crystal like?
Yeah.
It's just like, it was a very, very difficult material to carve. And if we go back in time, from the Bactrian period on the lands of Asia in that time, they could take 2 or 3 years to create one piece like the ones I have showed you yesterday on the museum, much more like simple than this one. Of course, this is like
So this is a
centuries.
natural material that has come out of the ground in a solid form, and then it's been carved.
Day by day, like lots of hours.
Wow.
It's just like an amazing thing. Of course, in 16th century there are much more tools than those days, but it's funny to think that rock crystal was a type of material that all cultures also wanted to have, like in cups and in sort of the amulets and all of that stuff. And they usually, like Platon, they refer to this material as cold ice, because it has this appearance and it's almost
Cold ice.
cold ice. It was almost like purified, a purified item. And this has also to do with poisoning, because since earliest times we find in different cultures, like we saw in movies and all of that stuff, it began with like plants and herbs, the idea of poisoning something. But in medieval period, effectively, it started to be a very easy way to kill your enemies.
Serious business kind of thing.
So what people did, they find out in nature some materials, either if it's rock crystal or jade or precious stones like agate, or even horn or coconut or serpentine, a lot of different materials, everything that is exotic, and they put like all the faith in that type of material, and they created anti-poison cups.
So the belief was that these exotic materials
Will
would somehow
neutralize.
like neutralize the poison.
Exactly, in different ways. For instance, jade will crack in contact with poisoning.
poison. Wow,
So
that's
we have
dramatic.
a few in here. So let's think how many people will die, had to die to have.
The fact that these jade vessels have survived suggests that someone may have died drinking out of it. In fact, I believe the most valuable item in the museum is a jade.
From jade, yeah. It's a libation bowl, from Mughal Empire, but coming back to rock crystal, they believe that it neutralizes poison, and the color will change when in contact. So you serve your drink, you wait, just okay, let's see, because you see through, it's very easy. So maybe it's better not to drink from. But it's very, very interesting, this idea of
Protecting oneself, really.
There's a time that they had these tasters for the kings, and
Sure.
who taste food and wine. But this is an interesting concept, and this is one of the things that I've learned with this collection that I didn't know. It's very interesting to know that people, not only with amulets, but with cups that protect you from poison.
It is fascinating, and like the sort of craftsmanship that goes into something like this, or some of the other precious materials. You would think that the faith would be debunked pretty quickly as people drop dead consuming out of these vessels. So it's there must have been a significant enough faith over a long enough amount of time for craftsmen to pop up that are specialists in working with these materials, for those that can afford it and that have, suffer the risk of being poisoned for whatever reason. And it's just amazing that people, either there wasn't as much poison going around as people thought, maybe they were paranoid, or they were still dropping dead, and yet the guy that made that
it was not
amethyst
pure.
cup wasn't very good at it. He didn't quite get the gilding right, and that's why it didn't work.
And you know what, with our conversation, I just remember another funny fact about poison, which is tankards. So we have a lot of tankards in the museum, and it's one thing that collectors love. It's tankards, and you can also chronologically engage with the different typology, and the evolution of tankards also is connected with poisoning the drink, not if it's just poison, but also some lashes that can fall over on taverns or something from the ceiling. In order to protect your drink, they started to have the lid.
Yes.
Because from very early times were just like style of a mug, you know. You drink like a pint or something from that. But then they started to have this careful to protect your drink from dangers or from...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense on both counts, both the falling from the ceiling thing, because you see some of the ceilings in some old bars and
Yeah.
pubs around the world, and they're kind of flaking to pieces. But the poison side of it as well, and because lidded tankards, and you, by the way, you've got some incredible examples here, like carved from ivory that are just some of the most beautiful pieces in the whole collection, I would say. But yeah, I think most people are familiar with that idea of the lid that you flick up. Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah, well, it's sort of a bit morbid to think that, or grim to think that these sort of things are also needed today as well. I mean, you do hear about people getting drugs dropped in their drinks, don't you?
True.
And all that sort of thing. So it's something that's continued right through to the modern era.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Now, I had left 2
Yes.
of these objects, perhaps to talk a little bit also about some research that it's been, or some mysterious that some...
Yeah, I was interested to ask you about whether there's any items in the collection that have some sort of mystery or intrigue to them, and that maybe the use case or the function of it isn't totally understood.
Yeah.
And now you're...
I'm picking up a bird or a duck.
This is not something you would look at and think, wow, this is for drinking. So it's a small duck. It looks like a duck ornament with legs.
Yeah, in a bronze.
Interesting legs, actually.
Yeah.
The feet actually almost look like human feet in shoes rather than webbed feet of a duck. So it's made out of bronze.
Yeah. And it's from the 1st millennium BC. And it's a bronze, of course, vessel, which has this typology, which is called ashkosh, which means to hold liquids in, not necessarily to pour something, because it doesn't have spout, but to hold them. And you can see here, there is also 2 holes, right?
Oh yes, in the top.
It will be to
A
have
handle.
an handle.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can also see like the design of the wings of the bird and the elongated neck and all of that stuff. So why did I pick up? Of course, if we talk about mystery in this collection, is what we were saying a few minutes ago, is that every object is like that there's a probability of you find more if you study, if you clean it, and if you look at it. If you study the interior, you will find interesting things. That's why I choose this one, because this was like made by a conservation team. The patine was like with an active oxidation, so we need to get them rescued. And at the same time, we have collect from the interior residues, because there was like we have different articles of this type of vessel, and some parallels that were indicating that probably was not used to hold wine or something. So once we were with this object on laboratory, we just removed some residues and went to study, and we got to understand a few things. First, is authentic, okay.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. The second one, that it will have wine, yeah. So we will find like remains of wine that time. And third, the beak and the legs were not authentic from that period, which now you can understand better because they have a different color, right?
Yes, they're darker.
But this was made in purpose, because we have like this clause in restoration conservation thing that it's everything that it's not authentic, we need to highlight it.
Okay. When do you think that the beak and the legs were added then? Is it quite recent?
Yeah. We don't have the exact time, but yeah, quite recent. I would say like after 17th century, because all of these objects as a track, we have to track all the past lives that each of them had like even if it's a museum, we have some cases like that. Even if it was like an inheritance of a family, we need to look to all of this. So, but we don't know exactly time, but it's not the same material than the rest of the body. So, yeah.
So first millennium BC.
First millennium BC, and an important thing which is about birds in that period. Birds were seen like magical entities because they can walk through different realms. They can fly in the sky. They can swim on water, and they can walk on earth.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, it's quite impressive, isn't
it?
I've never thought about it that way.
And that's why in that period, the birds were loved like that, and they have done like this is from the late Urnfield culture. So
where is that, and who are they?
Czech Republic.
Oh, Czech Republic.
Czech Republic.
Okay.
Yeah. So and we find like in articles a lot of similar shapes, and in fact without legs. So and this indicates that the bird has this symbolism of also to connect us to the afterlife because they migrate. So in winter, so it's very interesting. Yeah, that's why I choose.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. And I mean, do you drink out of this thing, or is it just for holding the wine?
It's just for holding the wine, like in ritual or like into dead culture, in the sense of when we go, like we do those days, but with different things. Like we go to cemeteries and we light on a candle or we put flowers. But in those days, back on those days, they will offer food or wine to make sure they have everything in the afterlife.
In the afterlife, yeah.
So this was supposed to use flat, right, without the legs, to put next to a grave or next to a ritual.
So the legs were never there in the first place.
No, and also that's why we are like struggling to. That's why we have a support, an acrylic support.
So someone decided to put legs on this duck about 300 years ago, and now it has to sit on acrylic plinth.
More recent times, more recent.
Yeah. So and then one day someone will be like, oh, they mounted this on an acrylic plinth. Now we've got to create something to hold the plinth.
Something heavy. That's funny. Yeah.
Wow. It's just incredible that the craftsmanship in the neck and the head.
And all the decorations.
I wouldn't have thought possible for that long ago, but it's an amazing piece.
And speaking to oldest objects, I have another one that it's the oldest that we have here.
Okay. Wow, that's a good one to finish on then, right?
Yeah. So, and it's not a drinking vessel, which is on purpose. Okay, what we have here, I don't know. It's fine. You can see it.
Yeah, point it that way. That's it. Yeah, great.
Right. So we have this huge base, okay, because I think it's easier if it's like elevated, and we have 10 centimeters. No, I'm terrible with
4 or 5 centimeters long, sort of cylinder.
Okay, it's a cylinder made of jade, right, with a perforation on the center. So, and this object is from the third millennium.
Through the middle there.
Yeah. So this object is from the 3rd millennium BC, and it represents a scene of royal banquet. So it shows in perfection what's the importance of ritual of drinking in this type of culture, which is the Ur civilization.
So third millennium BC.
3rd millennium BC,
so 5,000 plus years old.
Yeah. So, and what's it for, right? And what we have this piece of ceramic here. So this was used like our identity card for today. So like a signature of an individual, and it was hollow because it was supposed to go with to put it on your neck with a string.
Oh, like a necklace.
Like a necklace, yeah. And when you want to enter in some parts of some building, or you want to like negotiate some kind of deals, you just roll it over to a piece of ceramic, fresh clay, and it will like imprint.
So it's like a rolling stamp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will imprint like the image or the symbols that you have. And we have some theories for whose person should have been using this. Probably someone that was like intended to, or it was responsible for creating like royal banquets. So
Okay.
a
So
person who will like, because we
the
have
organizer of the
the
royal
organizer,
banquet.
So we have here some royal figures seated with an arms like standing in sort of a toast with a cup on hand. So this will like change our perspectives and help us to understand the importance of again a banquet or a ritual of drinking in that period.
Right. So this entire person's identity was sort of summarized in these drinking symbols that are on their personal stamp, and then they can go out and maybe acquire items for a banquet and use it like a signature, or like a contactless credit card.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And why did I lead it into this subject to mysterious part? Because we find out, like I think it was like 1 year ago, some article that said that recent studies showed us that this type of cylindrical seals are on the background of the first writing systems that exist, because if we isolate each symbol, which will have like a significance, right? So it's amazing to think that a cylindrical seal like this with different scenes represented here is a banquet, which is quite typical, but then it has to do with daily life of that civilization, and it can help us like trigger the beginning of the writing system. It's like kind of amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean it is. You know, you read stories about or historical tales of how beer and brewing was sort of intrinsic to the settling down of hunter-gatherers and the beginnings of civilizations. The Sumerians talk about beer quite a lot, and they're obviously one of the first writing systems with is it cuneiform?
Cuneiform.
Writing. And it's amazing to sort of see like these early uses of written language, the first uses of written language that have consumption of alcohol as kind of part of the system, and I think it just further sort of solidifies that idea that human culture is connected very strongly to the idea of sitting down and drinking together, and socializing and producing alcohol, because you can't produce alcohol if you're a hunter-gatherer. If you're wandering around from place to place every single night, it's a different location. You don't have the necessary apparatus. You don't have vats. You don't have milling equipment. You don't have the time to wait around for fermentation to happen to produce these things.
I think it's the same thing that we are like talking all this conversation, is that the idea that with drinking you are not alone. So it's like a cement, like social bond, and it's very like early. Like today, what we do while we are drinking, we are together, we toast, we do we say good things for spirits. In ancient times it will be to the gods, to honor the gods, but in these times it's to our health, and I think it's quite amazing.
And I mean the other side of that is how the idea of someone drinking alone is considered such a sad thing, because the two, they do go hand in hand, literally. This idea of community and bonding with other people, and of course alcohol, if used correctly, can serve as a great lubricant for that. That's wonderful. Look, I mean, It's just incredible, the items that you're showing us. And of course, it only represents a fraction of all of the many treasures that you have here. Where do you see the gaps in the collection? What are you hunting for at the moment? And how do you think it's going to evolve over the next few years?
So that's a good question. I'm actually, as a museum, the evolution, as we were speaking, it's kind of insert because we keep adding more layers and more stories to the collection. Of course, I could say that a gap we have, for example, geographically speaking, we have like objects from the 5 continents, but I can tell you that we have only one from the Oceania and like millions in Europe. So, and as I can say that pretty much of our collection is glass and not other materials. But do you know what is that the idea of this collection, and in that I'm really engaged with Adrian, is that each object is important as long as he tells us a good story. So my response will be a little bit fake, but the gaps will always exist while we still have stories to told. I think that is the perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
I mean, I just can't wait to see how this evolves. In such a short space of time, you've amassed such an incredible collection, and the stories are amazing. And I look forward to returning here in the future to see more. And long may it continue, this incredible documentation of human civilization through drinking.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Andreia Esteves, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tristan. It was a pleasure to have you here.